The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Grant Tower's 38th floor. Each drop a reminder of how far Claire Bennett was from her modest Boston apartment. The marble floors gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, and the air carried the sharp scent of expensive cologne and power. She clutched the manila folder against her chest, her knuckles white with tension. "You're late." Ethan Grant's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, his shoulders rigid beneath a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. "Traffic was bad, I don't care about traffic." He turned, and Claire's breath caught. At 30, Ethan Grant was devastatingly handsome in the way that powerful men often were. But his dark eyes held something colder than ambition, something broken. "Did you bring the medical records?" Claire's throat tightened. Her grandfather's diagnosis sat heavy in the folder: congestive heart failure, 6 months if he was lucky. The house they'd shared since her parents' death was already in foreclosure. She had nothing left to lose and everything to save. "Yes." She set the folder on his glass desk, her hands trembling slightly. "But I still don't understand why you need a wife who doesn't matter." His words hit like a physical blow. "Who won't complicate things when this arrangement ends." The contract lay spread between them. Stark black ink on cream paper. 1 year of marriage, complete discretion, financial security for her grandfather's care and her education. In return, she would provide Ethan with the perfect shield against his family's relentless matchmaking and his board's concerns about his stability. "My family expects me to marry Victoria Hale," Ethan said, moving to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. The amber liquid caught the light as he lifted it. "Beautiful, connected, ruthless. Everything they think I need." "And what do you think you need?" He paused, the glass halfway to his lips. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his features, before vanishing behind his usual mask. "Freedom." Claire picked up the pen, its weight surprising her. "What happens if someone finds out?" "They won't." His voice carried absolute certainty. "You'll continue your life in Boston. I'll continue mine here. We'll meet only when absolutely necessary." The pen hovered over the signature line. This wasn't how she'd imagined getting married. No white dress, no flowers, no love. Just 2 damaged people making a deal in a glass tower above a city that didn't care about their secrets. 1 year, she whispered. 1 year, he confirmed. She signed her name, the ink sealing her fate. Ethan moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the subtle scent of his cologne. His hand covered hers as he guided her finger to the wedding band he'd placed on the desk, a simple platinum circle that felt heavier than it looked. "Mrs. Grant," he murmured against her ear, his voice carrying an unexpected intimacy that sent shivers down her spine. Claire turned in her chair, finding herself trapped between his arms as he braced them on either side of her. Their faces were inches apart, and she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel his breath against her lips. "This doesn't mean anything," she said, but her voice betrayed her, coming out breathless and uncertain. "No," he agreed, but neither of them moved. Nothing at all. The sound of his phone buzzing shattered the moment. Ethan stepped back abruptly, his expression closing off as he checked the screen. "Victoria is here," he said, his voice flat. "Early for our dinner. You need to leave." But as Claire gathered her things, her heart hammering against her ribs, she caught something in his reflection on the dark window. A flash of regret, maybe even longing. Before she could process it fully, the elevator doors opened and Victoria Hale stepped out like a vision in red silk and diamonds. Victoria's ice blue eyes swept over Claire with predatory assessment. "Ethan, darling, who's this?" "No one important," Ethan replied without hesitation, but Claire caught the slight tension in his jaw. She was just leaving. As Claire stepped into the elevator, she heard Victoria's laugh, sharp and triumphant. "Good. I have such exciting news about our engagement announcement." The elevator doors began to close, but not before Claire saw Ethan's reflection in the window again. And this time he was looking directly at her. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Claire's phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. She fumbled for it in the darkness of her Boston apartment, her heart racing as she saw Ethan's name on the screen. I need you in New York. Now. His voice was strained, different from the controlled businessman she'd signed a contract with. In the background, she could hear sirens, shouting, the chaos of something gone terribly wrong. What happened? Just come. The Westin, room 1247. Use the name Sarah Mills. The line went dead, leaving Claire staring at her phone in the pre-dawn darkness. Every rational part of her brain screamed to stay in bed, to pretend this call never happened. But something in Ethan's voice, a vulnerability she'd never heard before, had her throwing clothes into a bag. The train ride to New York felt endless. Claire pressed her face to the window, watching the countryside blur past as questions multiplied in her mind. What kind of trouble was Ethan in, and why had he called her, of all people? The Westin's lobby was elegant, marble and soft lighting, a stark contrast to the anxiety clawing at Claire's chest. She gave the false name, received a key card, and took the elevator to the 12th floor with shaking hands. The door to room 1247 opened before she could knock. Ethan stood in the doorway, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie missing. There was a cut above his left eyebrow that had been cleaned but not properly treated. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was so raw it made her chest ache. "You're bleeding." Claire pushed past him into the room, her nursing instincts taking over. "Sit down. Let me look at that." "Claire, I sit." Her tone brooked no argument. She'd learned to be firm during her grandfather's medical crises, and apparently the skill translated to stubborn billionaires. Ethan sank onto the edge of the bed, watching her with dark eyes as she dampened a washcloth in the bathroom. The hotel room was standard corporate. Beige walls, generic art, a king bed that dominated the space. But the tension between them made it feel impossibly intimate. "This is going to sting," Claire warned, gently cleaning the cut. He didn't flinch, but she felt the subtle way his breathing changed, becoming deeper, more controlled. "There was an accident," he said quietly. "Victoria's car went off the Queensboro Bridge tonight." Claire's hand stilled. "Is she alive?" "Barely." His jaw tightened. "The police think the brakes failed, but Victoria's convinced someone tampered with her car. Someone who knew she was driving to see me. Who would do that?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "Take your pick. Business rivals, family members who think I'm too soft, board members who want me out." He caught her wrist gently, his thumb tracing over her pulse point. "Or someone who found out about us." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't pull away from his touch. "No one knows about us," she whispered. "Are you sure?" His eyes searched hers. "Have you told anyone? Your grandfather? Maybe a friend?" "No, no one." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she been careful enough? Had someone seen them together? Taken photos? Put the pieces together? Ethan's phone rang, shrill in the quiet room. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. "It's the hospital," he answered, his grip on Claire's wrist tightening as he listened. She watched the color drain from his face, watched his jaw clench with barely controlled emotion. "I understand. Thank you." He ended the call and looked up at Claire, his eyes haunted. "Victoria's awake. She's asking for me." He stood abruptly, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "She told the police she saw someone tampering with her car before she got in. A woman. Dark hair, early 20s. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. "Ethan, I swear to God I didn't." "I know." His voice was firm, absolute. "I know you didn't. But someone wants the police to think you did." "Why?" "Why would anyone?" "Because they know," Ethan said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "They know about the contract, about us, and they're trying to destroy me by destroying you first." He moved closer, his hands framing her face with unexpected tenderness. "I'm going to fix this, Claire. I promise you. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She should say no. She should run back to Boston and pretend this nightmare was someone else's life. But as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected to find there. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. "Yes," she whispered. I trust you. His lips crashed against hers, desperate and claiming. The kiss was nothing like their cold contract, nothing like the careful distance they'd maintained. It was raw, hungry, a man drowning and finding oxygen in the last place he expected. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing hard. Go back to Boston, he said, his voice rough. Don't answer calls from anyone you don't know. Don't go anywhere alone. And Claire, what? Don't trust anyone. Not even the people who say they're trying to help. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone rang again. This time, his entire body went rigid as he answered. Mother, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is quite late for... His eyes met Claire's as he listened, and she watched something shift in his expression. Something that looked like devastation. I see, he said finally. Yes, I understand. I'll be there in the morning. He ended the call and stood frozen, his face a careful mask that didn't quite hide the storm beneath. What is it? Claire asked, though part of her didn't want to know. My mother knows about you, Ethan said quietly, and she's calling an emergency board meeting in the morning. She's going to try to have me removed as CEO. Because of me? No. His smile was cold, bitter. Because I chose you over Victoria, and in my family, that's unforgivable. The Grant Industries boardroom smelled of leather and old money. 20 pairs of eyes watched Claire like she was something dangerous that had wandered in from the street. She sat beside Ethan at the massive mahogany table, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Ethan's mother, Diane Grant, sat at the head of the table like a queen presiding over an execution. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her Chanel suit immaculate, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. Let me make sure I understand, Diane said, her voice dripping with disdain. You married this girl in secret, a nursing student from Boston with no connections, no family worth mentioning, and a grandfather drowning in medical debt. And you expect this board to believe it was love? What I expect, Ethan said coldly, is for this board to remember that I've increased company profits by 42% in 3 years. My personal life is irrelevant. Your personal life became relevant the moment you signed a contract with this opportunistic little... Finish that sentence. Mother, and you'll regret it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, but Diane merely smiled wider. Oh, Ethan, still so protective. It's almost sweet. She opened a leather folder in front of her, which is why it pains me to show you this. She slid a photograph across the table. Claire's stomach dropped as she saw herself in the image, standing outside a small cafe in Boston. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, his face too blurry to identify, his hand on her shoulder. This was taken 2 weeks ago, Diane said. The same week your dear wife told you she was visiting her sick grandfather. Instead, she was meeting with a reporter from the Manhattan Herald, a reporter who specializes in exposing corporate fraud. That's not true, Claire said, finding her voice. I've never met any reporter. I don't even know. Don't you? Diane slid another photo across the table. This one showed Claire accepting an envelope from the same blurred figure. $50,000. Quite a sum for a nursing student, wouldn't you say? Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never seen these photos before. Had never been anywhere near that cafe with any mysterious man. But the images looked real, damning, irrefutable. It's fake, she said desperately, looking at Ethan. Someone doctored these. I swear to God, Ethan, I would never. But Ethan's face had gone carefully blank, the same mask he'd worn the night they signed their contract. When he looked at her, his eyes were cold, distant, the warmth she'd glimpsed in the hotel room completely gone. Ethan, please. You have to believe me. Believing you is what got us here, he said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. Claire felt something crack inside her chest, something she hadn't even realized had been forming between them. The board has voted, Diane announced, triumph evident in every word. Either you divorce this girl immediately and marry Victoria Hale as planned, or you're removed as CEO. You have 24 hours to decide. The meeting adjourned, board members filing out with carefully neutral expressions. Claire sat frozen, watching Ethan stare at the photographs as if they held answers she couldn't see. Say something, she whispered when they were alone. Tell me you know I didn't do this. I don't know what I know anymore. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. My driver will take you back to Boston. The contract is void. You'll receive your payout by the end of the week. That's it? You're just going to believe those photos over. Over what, Claire? He finally looked at her, and the emptiness in his eyes was worse than anger. Over a woman I've known for 3 weeks. A woman who signed a contract to marry me for money. Tell me, what exactly should I believe? She stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. You should believe that I came to New York at 2 a.m. because you called. That I stayed when I should have run. That what happened between us in that hotel room was real, even if you're too scared to admit it. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his expression, but then his jaw tightened and the mask returned. Goodbye, Claire. She walked out of that boardroom with her head high, refusing to give Diane Grant or anyone else the satisfaction of seeing her break. But in the elevator, alone, she pressed her forehead against the cool metal wall and let the tears come. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Park North Entrance. 1 hour. Come alone. I have proof you're innocent. Claire stared at the message, every warning Ethan had given her echoing in her mind. Don't trust anyone. Don't go anywhere alone. But Ethan didn't trust her anymore. And without proof of her innocence, she'd lost not just a fake marriage, but something far more dangerous. The possibility of something real. She texted back, I'll be there. Riverside Park was nearly empty in the late afternoon, the October wind cutting through Claire's jacket as she walked toward the north entrance. She scanned the scattered joggers and dog walkers, looking for anyone who seemed out of place. Claire, she spun around. Victoria Hale stood behind her, one arm in a sling, a bandage visible on her temple, but her smile was perfectly intact, sharp and predatory. You, Claire breathed. You sent the text. I did. Victoria moved closer, and there was something calculating in her ice-blue eyes. Because I know you didn't try to kill me, and I know who did. Why would you help me? Because, darling, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing Claire a series of photographs. Real ones, not doctored. They showed Diane Grant meeting with the same blurred man from the cafe photos. Money changing hands, documents being exchanged. Ethan's mother orchestrated everything. The photos, the accident, all of it. She wants her son back under her control, and you were in the way. But why would she hurt you? You're exactly who she wants him to marry. Victoria's smile turned bitter, because 3 months ago I told Diane I wouldn't marry Ethan. I'm in love with someone else, someone she'd never approve of. So she decided to handle both of us at once. Stage my accident to make you look guilty, then force Ethan to choose between saving you or saving his company. Either way, she wins. Claire's mind raced. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? I want to destroy Diane Grant, Victoria said simply. And I need your help to do it. But first, we need to get these photos to Ethan before he does something stupid. Like marry you? Worse. Victoria's expression turned grim. Like sign over his company to his mother to protect you. He's meeting with her lawyers right now. Claire's heart stopped. No, he wouldn't. He'd lose everything. That's what love does, Claire. It makes brilliant men into fools. Victoria held out her phone. So what do you say? Ready to save your husband? Claire took the phone, her hand steady despite the chaos in her chest. He's not my husband. Not really. Keep telling yourself that, Victoria said with a knowing smile. But we both know that stopped being true the moment he called you at 2 a.m. Claire burst through the doors of Diane Grant's Park Avenue office with Victoria close behind. The receptionist tried to stop them, but Victoria's icy glare sent her shrinking back to her desk. Inside the main office, Ethan stood facing his mother across an ornate desk covered in legal documents. His hand hovered over a pen, his expression carved from stone. Ethan, don't. He turned, surprise flickering across his features before hardening into anger. I told you to go back to Boston, and I told you I wasn't a liar. Claire strode forward, shoving Victoria's phone into his hands. Look at the photos. Your mother orchestrated everything. The cafe, the reporter, all of it. Ethan stared at the screen, his jaw clenching as he scrolled through image after image. Diane remained perfectly composed, but Claire caught the flash of fury in her eyes. "These prove nothing," Diane said smoothly. "Anyone can doctor photographs, as you well know." "They're time-stamped and geotagged," Victoria said, moving to stand beside Claire. "And before you try to have them deleted, I've already sent copies to every board member and 3 major news outlets. They'll publish in 2 hours unless you withdraw your ultimatum." "You ungrateful little careful, Diane." Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. "You're not the only one who knows how to play dirty. The difference is, I actually have evidence." Diane's composure finally cracked. She turned to Ethan, her voice sharp with desperation. "You would believe them over your own mother? I did this for you, to protect you from gold diggers and social climbers who—" "You tried to kill Victoria," Ethan said, his voice deadly quiet. "You framed my wife. You tried to destroy my company from the inside. Don't you dare claim this was about protecting me. She's not your wife. Not really. It's just a contract, Ethan. A business arrangement that went too far." "You're right." Ethan set down the pen, leaving the documents unsigned. It started as a contract, but somewhere between the signatures and the lies, it became something else. He turned to Claire, and for the first time since the boardroom, the mask was gone. Raw emotion flooded his features. Fear, hope, something that looked dangerously close to love. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have trusted you. Should have known you'd never—" "Stop!" Claire's voice cracked. "Don't apologize for protecting yourself. That's what we do, isn't it? We protect ourselves because we've learned that trusting people only leads to pain. Is that what you think?" He moved closer, his hand reaching out to cup her face. "That I don't trust you? You looked at those photos and you believed them." "For 5 minutes, Claire. 5 minutes where my world was falling apart and I couldn't think straight. But even then, even when every logical part of my brain said you'd betrayed me, my heart knew better." Tears burned behind Claire's eyes. "Your heart doesn't know me. We've known each other for 3 weeks. I knew you the moment you signed that contract," Ethan said. "When you looked at me with those terrified eyes and signed anyway because saving your grandfather mattered more than your own fear. I knew you when you came to New York at 2 a.m. without asking questions. I knew you when you stood in that boardroom and refused to let my mother break you. Ethan, I love you." The words came out raw, desperate. "I know it's insane. I know it's too fast. But I love you, Claire Bennett, and I'm done pretending this is just a contract." The world seemed to stop. Claire felt her heart hammer against her ribs, felt the weight of his words settle over her like a blessing and a curse. "You can't love me," she whispered. "You'll lose everything. I'll lose everything if I let you walk away." Diane's voice cut through the moment like broken glass. How touching. "But you're forgetting one small detail." She pressed a button on her desk phone. "Send them in." The office doors opened. 2 police detectives entered, their expressions professionally neutral. "Ethan Grant," the first detective said, "you're under arrest for securities fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." "What?" Claire grabbed Ethan's arm as he stepped back, shock written across his face. "He didn't do anything." "According to our investigation," the second detective said, pulling out handcuffs, "Mr. Grant has been siphoning funds from Grant Industries for the past 6 months. We have bank records, email correspondence, everything we need for a conviction." "You," Ethan breathed, staring at his mother. "You set this up as insurance. If the contract didn't work, if Victoria's accident didn't work, you'd just destroy me completely." Diane's smile was cold. "I built this company with your father. I won't watch you tear it apart for some girl you barely know. Sign over your shares, resign as CEO, and I'll make all of this go away. Refuse, and you'll spend the next 10 years in prison." "Don't do it," Claire said desperately. "Ethan, there has to be another way." "There isn't." He turned to her, his eyes full of something that looked like goodbye. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry." "Sir, we need to take you in now," the first detective said, moving forward with the handcuffs. "Wait." Victoria stepped forward, her phone held high. "Before you arrest anyone, you might want to see this." She played a video. Diane Grant in this very office, speaking to someone off camera about fabricating evidence, about framing her own son, about making sure he had no choice but to surrender control of the company. "I've been recording since we walked in," Victoria said calmly. "Funny thing about New York. It's a one-party consent state for recordings. And I'm pretty sure confessing to multiple felonies on camera counts as probable cause to redirect your investigation." The detectives exchanged glances. The second one reached for his radio. "We're going to need backup at this location. And someone from white-collar crimes." Diane's face went ashen. For the first time, Claire saw real fear in her eyes. "You have no idea what you've done," Diane hissed at Victoria. "The people I work with, the connections I have, will be very interested in cutting deals," the first detective said, pulling out handcuffs. "Diane Grant, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder." As the detectives led Diane away, her composure finally shattered completely. She screamed threats and accusations, her voice echoing down the hallway until the elevator doors cut her off. The office fell silent. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the empty doorway where his mother had disappeared. His hands were shaking, his breathing uneven. "Ethan," Claire said softly, moving to touch his arm. He flinched away. "Don't." His voice was hollow. "Don't touch me right now. I can't." He pressed his palms against his eyes. "She's my mother, Claire. My mother tried to destroy me. Tried to destroy you, and I didn't see it coming. That's not your fault, isn't it?" He lowered his hands, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. "I should have known. Should have seen the signs. Instead, I was so focused on escaping her control that I walked right into her trap, and I almost took you down with me. But you didn't," Claire said firmly. "We're both still standing. We won, did we?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "My mother's going to prison. My company's going to be torn apart by investigations. The media will have a field day. And you," his voice cracked, "you're going to realize that being with me means a lifetime of this chaos. Of people trying to use you to get to me. Of never knowing who to trust." "I already know who to trust," Claire said. She reached up and kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into that single moment. When she pulled back, tears were streaming down his face. "I love you," she whispered. "And I'm not going anywhere. Contract or no contract, publicity or scandal, I choose you, Ethan Grant. I choose us. Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you choose this mess? Choose me? Because 3 weeks ago, you looked at a desperate girl with nothing to offer, and you gave her a chance to save the person she loved most. Because you called me at 2 a.m. when you were falling apart and trusted me to catch you. Because you were ready to give up everything to protect me." She pressed her forehead against his. "And because when you told me you loved me, I felt it. For the first time in my life, I felt completely, terrifyingly seen. That's worth fighting for." Victoria cleared her throat from the doorway. "This is very sweet, really. But we have about 90 minutes before those photos go public. Might I suggest you two figure out your next move?" Ethan pulled back, wiping his eyes, his expression shifting from devastation to determination. "We go public," he said. "Our way. Our story. No more secrets, no more contracts. Just the truth." "The truth?" Claire asked. He smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. "That I married a woman I barely knew, fell in love with her against all logic, and almost lost her because I was too afraid to admit it. The board will probably try to oust me anyway. The media will have a field day, but at least we'll face it together." "Together," Claire agreed. Victoria smiled. "Well then, let's go burn down what's left of Diane Grant's empire, shall we?" 6 months later, Claire stood in the hospital hallway, her hands clasped in front of her, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent lights. Real wedding ring this time, not the contract band. The one Ethan had placed on her finger 2 months ago in a small ceremony with just her grandfather and Victoria as witnesses. The door to her grandfather's room opened. The doctor's expression told her everything before he spoke. "I'm so sorry, Claire. We did everything we could." She nodded, unable to speak past the grief clawing up her throat. Ethan's arm came around her shoulders, steady and warm, holding her together as her world fell apart. "Can I see him?" she managed. "Of course. Take all the time you need." Her grandfather looked peaceful in the hospital bed, the machines finally silenced. Claire took his hand, still warm, and felt the tears come. "I kept my promise, Grandpa," she whispered. "I got you the treatment. I bought us more time. I just wish we'd had more." "He knew you loved him," Ethan said softly. "That's what mattered." They sat with him until the sun set, until the nurses came with quiet condolences and necessary paperwork. Walking out of that hospital felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. In the car, Claire stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. "He was the only family I had left," she said. "And now you have me," Ethan said, taking her hand. "For better or worse, remember? This definitely counts as worse. Then it's a good thing I'm not going anywhere." The past 6 months had been brutal. The board had tried to remove Ethan as CEO, citing the scandal with his mother and the instability of his personal life. The media had torn apart their marriage, calling Claire a gold digger and Ethan a fool. Victoria had testified against Diane, who was awaiting trial on multiple charges. But through it all, they'd held on to each other. Ethan had stepped down as CEO voluntarily, installed an interim board, and focused on rebuilding the company's reputation from the ground up. Claire had finished her nursing degree while dealing with photographers camped outside her apartment and strangers dissecting her life online. Some days, she wondered if love was supposed to be this hard. If fighting for someone was supposed to feel like drowning. But then Ethan would look at her the way he was looking at her now, like she was the only solid thing in his shifting world, and she remembered why they'd chosen this. Back at their apartment, a modest place in Brooklyn that felt more like home than his penthouse ever had, Claire stood at the window looking out at the city. "I got the call today," Ethan said from behind her. "The board wants me back. Full reinstatement as CEO, effective immediately. Victoria's been appointed to the board to ensure better oversight. The company's stable again." "That's good," Claire said, but her voice was flat, distant. "Claire." He moved closer, his hands on her shoulders. "Talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking that 6 months ago, you told me you loved me, that you'd face anything with me, but I never stopped to ask if you regretted it. If sometimes you wish you'd signed those papers, married Victoria, kept your easy life." "Easy?" He turned her to face him. "Claire, my life before you was a performance. Every smile calculated, every relationship strategic, every moment carefully controlled. That wasn't easy. That was suffocating. But you had your company, your reputation, your mother, awful as she was. Now you have a wife the world thinks is beneath you, a mother in prison, and a scandal that will follow you forever. And I've never been happier," he said simply, "because I'm finally living a life that's mine. Not my mother's, not the board's, not society's expectations. Mine. Ours." Tears burned behind Claire's eyes. "I lost him, Ethan. My grandfather was the only person who believed in me before you, and now he's gone. And I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to—" Her voice broke. Ethan pulled her into his arms, letting her sob against his chest until she had nothing left. "You're not drowning," he said when she finally quieted. "You're grieving, and that's okay, but you're not alone in it. You have me. You have Victoria, surprisingly. You have a life we built together out of a fake contract and impossible odds. Why do you stay?" she whispered. "Really, when it would be so much easier to walk away." He pulled back enough to look at her, his dark eyes intense. "Because the night I called you at 2 a.m, I was sitting in that hotel room thinking about ending it all. Not the company, not the scandal, my life. I was so tired of performing, of being the person everyone needed me to be, that I couldn't see a way out." Claire's breath caught. "Ethan. But then you walked through that door," he continued, "exhausted and worried and completely out of your depth, but you came anyway. Because I asked. Because underneath all the contracts and arrangements you saw me, the real me, and you didn't run. You never told me," she said. "I didn't know how. But that's when I knew, Claire. That's when I knew this was more than a contract. You saved my life that night, not with grand gestures or promises, just by showing up." He cupped her face in his hands. "So I stay because you stayed. Because loving you is the first real thing I've ever done. Because when I look at you, I see a future that's messy and complicated and absolutely terrifying, and I want it more than I've ever wanted anything. Claire kissed him then, tasting salt from both their tears. I love you, she said against his lips, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Even when I'm a stubborn idiot who believes fake photos. Even then, his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. You should check that, Claire said. Ethan pulled it out, his expression shifting as he read. It's from the DA's office. My mother's pleading guilty. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she's giving up names of everyone involved in her schemes. Board members, politicians, business rivals. How do you feel about that? Relieved, he said after a moment. Sad, angry, grateful it's almost over. All of it at once. That's allowed, you know. Feeling everything at once. Is it? He smiled. You'd think a CEO would have better emotional compartmentalization. Good thing you're not just a CEO anymore. You're also a husband, and husbands are allowed to be messy and complicated. Just like wives, especially like wives. They stood there in their Brooklyn apartment, two people who'd started as strangers bound by a contract and became something neither of them expected. The city hummed below them, indifferent to their struggles, their victories, their love. What now? Claire asked. Now, Ethan said, pulling her closer. We keep going. We grieve your grandfather. We rebuild the company. We face whatever comes next. Together. No more secrets? No more secrets. No more contracts? He kissed her forehead, just promises. The kind we choose to keep. 3 months later, Victoria called with news. Diane's sentencing is today. Thought you'd want to know. Claire stood in the hospital break room, her scrubs still smelling of antiseptic, and thought about the woman who'd tried to destroy them. What's she getting? 8 years, with possibility of parole in 5. It's less than she deserved, but her cooperation got a lot of dangerous people off the streets. How do you feel about it? Claire asked. You testified against her. Lighter, Victoria said. Like I can finally breathe. Speaking of which, I'm getting married next month. Small ceremony, just close friends. You and Ethan should come. Really? After everything. After everything, you two are the only people who understand what it's like to choose love over logic. My fiancé and I were facing some similar pushback. It helps to know we're not alone. At the wedding, Claire watched Victoria marry her girlfriend, a brilliant lawyer named Sarah who looked at Victoria the way Ethan looked at Claire, like she was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. They look happy, Ethan murmured, his arm around Claire's waist. They do, she agreed. We all do, actually. Considering how this started. You mean with you desperately needing money and me desperately needing an escape? Exactly that. He kissed her temple. Best contract I ever signed. It wasn't a contract in the end, though, was it? No, Ethan agreed. It was a choice. The first real choice I ever made. And I'd make it again. Every single time. Years later, Claire would look back on that moment in the Brooklyn apartment, both of them grieving and healing and choosing each other despite every logical reason not to, and recognize it for what it was. The moment they stopped running from their pasts and started building their future. The media eventually moved on to new scandals. The company thrived under Ethan's leadership. Victoria and Sarah adopted twin girls. Claire opened a clinic in her grandfather's memory, providing care to families who couldn't afford it otherwise. And sometimes, late at night, Ethan would pull out the original contract from a locked drawer and they'd read through it together, laughing at the careful legal language that tried to reduce love to clauses and conditions. Section 3, subsection B, Ethan would read. The parties agree to maintain appropriate distance in public settings. We failed that one spectacularly, Claire would say. Section 7, subsection A. This agreement shall terminate after 1 year unless both parties agree to extend. We definitely extended. Forever, he'd agree, pulling her close. We extended forever. Because that's what love was, in the end. Not a contract with terms and conditions, not a transaction with a set expiration date. It was a choice, made over and over, to show up for someone even when it was terrifying, especially when it was terrifying. Claire Bennett had signed her name on a piece of paper thinking she was buying time for her grandfather, saving the only family she had left. She never imagined she was actually signing up for a life with a broken billionaire who would teach her that love wasn't about perfection or ease. It was about standing in hotel rooms at 2 a.m. It was about believing in someone even when the evidence said not to. It was about choosing each other, again and again, through grief and scandal and impossible odds. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it was about finding someone who looked at you like you were the answer to every question they'd stopped asking. Someone worth fighting for. Someone worth choosing. Someone worth loving. Even when love felt like the most dangerous contract of all. The end.